Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of stories affecting the Sikh community around the world, and in today's show, we take a specific look at the often forgotten Sikh community in Jammu and Kashmir, and how this month marks a key moment in their protest, dubbed the Sikh resistance, fighting for their very cultural survival. And just across the border in Pakistan, the president signs an important bill finally granting minorities, including Sikhs, greater recognition and power over their own affairs. Well, all that and more on today's show. But joining me, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. I hope if anybody in our viewing audience is out in the Abbotsford, Chilliwack region, that you're staying dry. I know it has been quite awful here in the Lower Mainland and Fraser Valley, so I hope that you're okay. We suffered a little bit of flooding here, but nothing major. It was easy to clean up. Took some time, but we got her done, no problem. So I hope everybody else is doing well. Tonight, you want to stick around because we've got a story about extortion that you're not going to believe. You are going to look at this and be amazed. But in any event, we'll also be following the reports tonight with your comments, as we always do. So make sure you stick around and see if your comment made the grade. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed. James and I together, in the meantime, will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community around the world. And indeed, at the end of the show, we will take a look at loads of great comments. So thank you for those. Right, James, let's get underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
We're going to start off with illegals being arrested out in your neck of the woods, Angus. Apparently, the UK has stepped up raids on workplaces, including a Christmas market where it was not only Indian nationals, but also Iranians and Chinese that were taken into custody and will be exported out of the country, and it is apparently the record numbers for the UK in the history of arrests and deportations. So I thought that was very interesting. But yeah, what says Christmas better than you're getting arrested and deported from a nation of, it's supposed to be open to everybody. But again, it's if you're in the country illegally, if you're working illegally, this is the risk you run. So once again, it is being reported on the BBC. So if you're interested in finding out more information about that story, by all means. Of course, there were quotes from various politicians and inspectors, and one was Sam Malhotra, who said there's no hiding place for the immigration or from the immigration rules, that if you are breaking the rules, they are going to be, as he quoted, "We are working around the clock to identify this criminality wherever it's taking place, and those found working illegally will be arrested, detained, and removed wherever possible." So again, just showing that the U.S. is not the only country in the world that's really clamping down on immigration. We know here in Canada and in the UK. And it went on to state that the latest figures revealed more than 8,000 illegal migrants have been arrested after 11,000 raids were carried out by immigration enforcement from October 2024 to September of 2025. As I stated earlier, it's the largest enforcement crackdown on illegal workers since records began, and sits alongside action to remove nearly 50,000 people with no right to be in the UK. So I just thought that I would share that with you. It seems, as I said, it's not just the US cracking down, it's other Western nations, including Canada, the UK, and I'm sure there's a lot more crackdown in other countries as well right now. As we move on, in the area of idiots in the news, we are looking at a truck driver, which I think there might be more to this story than what is on the surface. In Sault Ste. Marie, there's Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario, but there's also one in Michigan State. And apparently this individual was a truck driver from Brampton, Ontario, and he was arrested in Michigan at the International Bridge. Why? Well, he was driving a stolen tractor trailer. The tractor that he was driving was stolen. The container or the trailer that he was hauling was flagged for different infractions and safety issues. So when the highways, the traffic enforcement, and the border services actually had a multi-jurisdictional crackdown going on, they spotted this one and it came up as flagged. When they stopped it, they found that the VIN number was actually altered. So again, this is a stolen tractor from Ontario across an international border and into Michigan. If you're going to be driving a stolen vehicle, chances are you shouldn't be crossing international borders with it. It just makes me shake my head. But on that, if the individual, maybe he's guilty, maybe he's not. He hasn't been proven guilty in a court of law yet. But it just goes to me to signal a warning to people that if you're working for a company, you're hired as a driver, you get into a company vehicle or a what appears to be a company vehicle and you're hauling a trailer. Well, first of all, yes, you are responsible to do a safety check. You should be checking your paperwork on your trailer. But if it has been suspended or flagged for safety issues, you may not be, as the driver, aware of it if it's a safety issue that's not in your pre-check or something that you are unaware of in doing your safety check. It's not obvious. The other thing is, how many times do you actually get into any vehicle you're driving and check the VIN number to see if it's been altered? As a professional driver, I have never even thought of it. I've driven, hundreds of different vehicles for different companies or clients, and I've never thought to check the VIN number. Maybe he was an unwitting driver who just happened to be hired by a fly-by-night company that put him in a stolen trailer or tractor and trailer. I don't know. But I just thought it was interesting that if he is in fact responsible and was involved in this scheme, yeah, I just shake my head why you would take a stolen truck across an international border. Just screams, red flag to me. So I just thought I would share that because I got a little chuckle out of the stupidity of it in any event. Now we are going to take a look here at an extortion unlike others that we hear about. This one actually is a blogger who is in British Columbia, and he targets different companies, including claims of the Khalistan Tiger Force. He claims that members of certain business entities and certain business holdings and investments are actually funding the Khalistan Tiger Force. And it's just amazing the information that this guy has claimed on his website. However, with that said, he has been taken to task by a farmer in the Okanagan up in Kelowna. Now, this individual, Daryl McCaskin, he is running a website called Gangsterism Out. Apparently, he is exposing these people with gangster links. And it goes on to link people to the Sinaloa cartel, and he calls the Khalistan Tiger Force, and he tries to link the Niger brothers, Hardeep Singh Niger's brothers, to it, and all kinds of different things on the website. But this court has cited him for attempted extortion, defamation, among other claims, but he keeps failing to even show up in court. So the judge has issued an arrest warrant as far back as May, and he again just recently failed to show up. The judge threw out his ability to defend the defamation claims by the farmers at the Sandier fruit packers in the Okanagan and said absolutely they are being slandered, that this is no question. Now, the claims that he has made against them is saying that they were involved in organized crime, that they're involved in murder, that they're involved in drug trafficking, that the family is involved in all kinds of other criminality and money laundering and financing terror, all kinds of things that this guy has put on his website. Now, it gets even more interesting because when the justice looked at it, he effectively, as I said, he's awarding the Sanders a win and saying that they are winning by default because this individual keeps not showing up for court. Even though they've got evidence and proof that he has been served, he knows of what's going on, it's all been proper, so he is just failing to show up in court. Now, he goes by various aliases online, and one of them is Ace Ventura, which is just unbelievable. But the judge basically, or not basically, but was quoted as saying, that he is running an unsupported campaign of hate-filled vitriol. And it's not only against the Sander family. It goes on, and let's take a look where. This is his website. He claims that the Sander family is running a fentanyl lab at Black Mountain. He is claiming that, there's involvement of the Bank of Montreal because they're financing the Sanders different mortgages, and it just goes on. And these guys are actually very involved in the business, very involved in the community. They run a clean business, and there is no links to criminality. So just to make that very clear. But the reason why this blogger and online website is going is because he actually extorts companies and individuals. He puts stories like this up and then charges them to take them down and strike it from the internet. And here's a picture of his, or a view of his site. So he's got different claims on here. And here's another one on this side. I'm just going to move that screen. But you can see here that he's got claims of the Khalistan Tiger Force and tying people to that and investments and all kinds of craziness. And then you go on to look at this person further. And I'm doing quite a bit of investigation into this guy to see what we can find out further. But also because the Sanders and others are having a hard time getting the site shut down because it has to go before a U.S. court because GoDaddy is the website host. They're based in the U.S. So they have to go further after the Canadian courts. They have to go to the U.S. courts to try and get an order to shut this site down, even though it's been proven that it's defamation. It is all kinds of things. So in any event, I'm looking to contact GoDaddy because of the fact that it should be just simply under the terms of service that this site is taken down. Now, let's get into who is this Daryl Grant McCaskill that is extorting these companies and individuals. And for the record, a lot of people and a lot of the sources that I'm researching are very clear that this guy has a very racist agenda. And this is who he is. Look at this. He is a homeless guy with mental health issues. He is just out there at Starbucks Wi-Fi hotspots putting these articles up. When he picks up his checks, he's having them sent to a mental health facility in the city of Burnaby, picks them up, and then he goes and cashes them or just takes them back to his homeless encampment. It is just a most bizarre story that we look at the extortion problems going on across Canada, and this one just blew my mind. And the more I looked into it, this guy is allegedly a white nationalist. He is running his blog and his website from a cell phone and from Wi-Fi at Starbucks. It's just incredible. And so he also goes by Dr. Stocksman and others, but he's also doxing people on his site. He actually is putting people's names and addresses up as well as other information, which again should be, he should be held liable. But the courts are having such an issue trying to, being that he's a transient, that he's homeless. They know, that he's got these mental health issues, but at the same time, he is causing major problems for these individuals. Now, he is apparently, he's also been accused of approaching children in a shopping mall for a sexual manner. He has been charged with fraud, with tax fraud, and many other things. Now, he also had a lawyer that worked for him, a female lawyer. He ended up being charged in 2016 with criminal harassment of that female lawyer, who ended up having to take a restraining order out against this guy. And as you can see here, this is the official government court system. So you can see all of these different cases that are against him. South Coast, British Columbia, Transportation Authority, so the Transit Authority, Global Securities Corporation, all of these different individuals who have either filed claims against him for similar activities or other crimes, as well as him trying to force these people to give him money. It's just bizarre. But I thought that it was very important to point out. So if you do run across this site, gangsterismout.com, you know that this is a fraudulent site. This individual is targeting people, but he seems to really have a thing for the Khalistan. Anybody involved in the Khalistan movement, he is labeling as terrorists and such, and trying to link them with different individuals who have been labeled terrorists by the India government and elsewhere. So he has a very racial undertone to most of his articles there. So very interesting, Angus. I went down that rabbit hole and it just kept pulling me deeper and deeper.
It is an interesting story, this, because it does actually highlight the good and the bad of the internet. I mean, the internet is a wonderful thing. It's literally been revolutionary in modern society. And it brings an awful lot of good. It does allow all sorts of people who never had any sort of voice before to suddenly have a voice with an audience literally of global proportions, of trillions or billions of people. But this is an example of where it potentially goes wrong. And YouTube, for example, YouTube is full of bloggers of all every nature, every size, shape, theme, you name it, every subject. And again, it's great because, again, it gives anybody with a camera, with a webcam or a mobile phone, the ability to broadcast to the world. Great. I mean, in principle, that's a good thing. But of course, it allows a window to people like this to suddenly spread misinformation, disinformation, and slander. Good old-fashioned slander, defamation, etc. And of course, I suppose there are two elements to this. There are those like this gentleman who clearly has mental issues, and I think his history speaks for himself, his criminal history as well. So there's the criminal sort of mental health issue here, where these people, rightly so, do have as free access as anybody else to the internet, but unfortunately then use it for nefarious means like this. Now, the problem, of course, is the internet being global. It is when you launch something on YouTube or whatever channel it happens to be, or a website like this, it is extraordinarily difficult for the victim to seek redress. And this actually is a case where GoDaddy, based in the US, it requires a US court order. Now, that in itself is, well, it's tough. But you imagine if this website was hosted in the Philippines or in Indonesia or Iceland or somewhere. You know, suddenly the international aspect, because the internet obviously transcends borders. If you're the victim of one of these things, is that how on earth do you close it down? The trouble with the internet is, and I suppose again it's a double-edged sword, it's also a good thing, is that once something is on the internet, it's almost impossible to close down. It is out there. The lid is lifted off the box and it's out there. You can never put it back in the box. And again, that has a positive aspect if it's information that must never be hidden away or buried. And once it gets out there, alternatively, it's when defamation or slanderous things like this, or in fact, it's libel rather. If libelous sort of things are written down and released on the internet, again, if you can't close it down, you're the victim. It's deeply, deeply unfair. So, but then, of course, there's the other aspect of this, which is and we've touched on this to a certain degree, for example, affecting the Sikh community. We have the right-wing extremists. I'm thinking, of course, a certain blogger that we've talked about in recent times. He was a right-wing extremist who takes every opportunity to have a go at the Khalistan movement, and has actually, as we said at the time, is I would say skirting legality. Now, he's quite high profile, the specific individual I'm talking about, but there are many like him who deliberately use the internet, and essentially they're almost amateur, they're amateur policemen, let's call it, of the world. They reckon that they can go out and make these slanderous or libelous claims against people like, well, Satellite TV. We've certainly had our fair share of slander against the channel and the owners of the channel. But of course, the problem is they are skirting legality, and it comes back to, well, what do we do about this? How do we go about closing these down? Well, there are legal recourses to some degree, but ultimately, if these people are in overseas territories, it suddenly becomes a lot harder, etc., etc. So I think this does highlight one of the issues, and of course, many YouTubers, because again, it's open to literally anybody, any youngster, any teenager can get online and make all sorts of claims. They tend to forget the real world also, but there are real world consequences of many of these channels, and many of these people don't realise and do fall foul of the law. Quite genuinely, they fall foul of the law because they will come up onto YouTube. They'll start making all these ridiculous claims, like this gentleman has, for example, and they suddenly find that their door receives a knock from law enforcement when they are finally managed to be tracked down, and they are served legal papers and they are sued. And satellite TV has been the subject of various legal letters about claims that we've made. It's certainly not, it's more on the Punjabi side, I would say, where we have actually specifically made claims against individuals, Hindutva individuals, and they've tried legal recourse. Now, I'm happy to say that we always win in these cases because we just say nothing but the truth. But ultimately, if you are a YouTuber or on any public discourse and you start to make these claims, you better be damn sure that you can back them up with fact, because it is very possible that you will face the law and you will have to justify your statements in a court of law. Now, sadly, the average teenager who launches a blog or a mentally challenged individual like this who makes these claims, they don't realise this. They're a little bit naive to the fact that when you make a statement on a public channel, a public television channel, or even YouTube, you are opening yourself to be liable. And if you're an amateur at this, you better be damn careful, James. So anyway, I'm going to quickly jump back just to wrap up now, just on the illegal immigration story about in the UK. Yes, this is a theme running across, I would say, the Western world to a large degree now. This is the backlash after this agenda of uncontrolled immigration into the West, and arguably the root cause of that could be all sorts of discussions on their own. We in the West have invaded various countries, tried to impose our so-called democracy on these countries, and the backlash has been this huge pouring of individuals from these countries into our own nation. So it's a very self-perpetuating story. But ultimately, yes, there has been a huge issue that we've covered on many occasions about immigration, both legal and illegal, into our nations. And the UK, of course, has been hugely subject to this. We have become a soft touch. We have become the immigration capital of Europe because all these immigrants are travelling from all sorts of countries, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan or Somalia. They're crossing Europe, crossing safe countries and heading to the UK because we are a soft touch. Because they know that when they cross the channel in one of their dinghies and they get assisted to cross the channel by our own state entities for some bizarre reason, they're given a hotel room, quite often in a 4 or 5 star hotel. They are given a mobile phone. They are given benefits to live on, and they know they can just basically put their feet up. Thank you very much. They've got a roof over their heads. They are served food. They have a mobile phone, and they are given a financial stipend on a daily basis or a weekly basis so that they can eat. I mean, who wouldn't want to come? Who wouldn't want to leave certain countries in Africa to come and live like that? I mean, the weather is another issue. I say that slightly tongue-in-cheek. But ultimately, yes, so as a result, there's been this huge backlash, unsurprisingly, and it's totally predictable backlash, is that the theme, the mood music here in the UK, as reflected in America and across Europe, is we've had enough. We are a small nation. We are a small physically, geographically. We have only a finite amount of resources and land and infrastructure. We can't support this huge rise in population, particularly if they are illegal. So, of course, the government, who actually themselves have been responsible for a lot of this illegal immigration through their lack of ability to stop it, are responsible for this. But they are now, even themselves, being forced to crack down on it. And I think your story is very reminiscent of what they're having to do. It's reflecting, obviously, what Trump's doing in the US, is that, and as I keep saying, is that when people start bleating about, oh, it's cruel, it's horrible, they're sending in these scary, intimidating ICE officials, or here in the UK, our own officials, all dressed in black. Well, I'm sorry, but this is the result of liberal, loose, progressive liberal policies. Unfortunately, the policies of Joe Biden, the policies of our previous Conservative government, and before that the Blair government, who basically threw open the doors. And we have a scandal here, is that Blair deliberately, we know this as a fact, Blair and his government deliberately opened the borders to the UK because they knew all those incomers would be voting for the Labour Party, the left-wing party of the UK. And that is, as a result, we are now seeing the backlash of that. And sadly, the backlash has to be robust. There is no choice. This is an inevitable result of those sorts of policies. So as sad as it is, and I've never take any satisfaction seeing a victim or somebody who's suffering in life being thrown out of this country. Ultimately, that is an inevitable conclusion of these sorts of policies, James. So there you go.
Yeah. Exactly. And yeah, it's just interesting to look at it in terms of how it just seems to have come to a head over the last year as the U.S. really seemed to lead the charge, so to speak. And then, of course, that spilled into Canada and other nations as well. So, just over the last year, to see the crackdown universally on all of these individuals, but also now that they are looking at the criminality aspects, and that's coming to light as well on how many different countries are involved in, transnational repression. And it's not just India. We've got Iran, we have Russia, we have China, we have Eritrea. There's so many other nations that are involved in this foreign interference and the transnational repression that it is really coming to light. But I think the most active here, at least in Canada, of course, is India for that. So again, we'll keep an eye on that as the new year approaches.
Indeed, we shall. So let's move on to my first story. I'm going to jump all the way across to Jammu and Kashmir. This is an area that we do talk about quite regularly, of course, particularly in recent times about the Pahalgam attack, and the whole story of J&K is riven with tragedy in many ways, not least since partition and the issues that have arisen since partition, and of course J&K both claimed by India and Pakistan, and the majority population, of course, being Muslim, and this fight for independence of J&K, and in fact even the United Nations recognised and demanded that the people of J&K should have the right to a plebiscite, to a referendum for independence, which of course unsurprisingly India has completely ignored and still remains ignoring, and much to J&K's sadness.
Right.
But of course we do forget that in the J&K there is a large Sikh population, and they do tend to get sort of forgotten about by in the bigger picture, this sort of binary discussion of it's all about Hindus and Muslims in J&K. Actually it's not. There is this third party, or this third space as it's called, which is the large Sikh community in J&K. As I say, they do often get neglected, and certainly we as a channel, we don't often talk about the Sikhs of J&K. So I'm going to talk about, I'm doing a specific article on this today because to highlight just what's going on, because it's particularly relevant at the moment, because there are actually increasing protests about the Sikh or being generated by the Sikh community in J&K, because a lot of these issues obviously reflect what's going on just down in Punjab as well. Very similar issues. So there is what's called this J&K Renaissance, as it's been coined. And let me zoom in so people can actually see this a bit. There we go. So the J&K Sikh Renaissance, it refers to this sort of growing movement within the local Sikh community to reclaim their cultural identity and to secure what we often talk about, their language right, the Punjabi language rights, and move away from this history of displacement towards a bit more of a self-reliant economy. And again, it reflects very much on the Punjab issues. So much of the media obviously focuses on this Hindu-Muslim sort of story, and again, this sort of friction and this fractious relationship between those two larger communities. The third largest community in J&K is, of course, the Sikh community. And as I say, it's referred to as this third space. So there is this, and the main fight at the moment, it does reflect, again, the stories that we talk about in the Punjab regularly. It's about language. It's about reclaiming Punjabi as an official language in J&K. So this forms actually one of the central pillars of this renaissance. And it forms into sort of three main areas. Firstly, there is this legal side, the legislative conflict. And protests are actually peaking at the moment. They've intensified throughout this year as momentum has gathered, and they are peaking at the moment, following the exclusion of the Punjabi language from the official languages list of the J&K Union Territory. Now, the official languages include Kashmiri, Dogri, Hindi, of course, Urdu, the main language of the Pakistan and the Muslim side of J&K, and of course English as well. But Punjabi has been dropped as an official language, and that in itself is quite suspicious. There's also these educational demands, and these organisations that are taking the vanguard of the Sikh protest, they include primarily the All J&K Sikh Coordination Committee, and they're demanding that Punjabi is reinstated as a compulsory subject in schools. And I'm going to come back to this in a moment, specifically about this language argument. And then finally, there are demands for recruitment and saying that we need more specialised Punjabi language teachers and professors in both, obviously, secondary schools particularly, and tertiary education, the universities and colleges. Now, there is also a move and a drive towards what they call economic self-reliance and entrepreneurship. We talk a lot about how ingrained in Sikh genetics is this drive to create, to build, to be entrepreneurial. And there is a visible shift amongst the Sikh youth, the young in J&K, trying to move away from this traditional reliance on government jobs, state-provided jobs, into promoting actual private enterprise, capitalism, basically, in its purest form. It's trying to promote the young in the Sikh community that get out there, build businesses, create wealth, create your own wealth, because that actually gives you independence. It takes you away from sucking off the public teat, as it's called, moving away from state jobs to actually establishing your own businesses. And with your own business, your own enterprise, comes a lot more independence and capability. And this is headed up by two main organisations, Mission Youth and Mission Yuva, or these are two schemes that are pushing this. And these are two initiatives that provide funding and training towards this whole idea. And they're focusing on areas particularly like agri-tech, or agricultural technology, as it's known. Obviously, that whole northwestern part of India is a very fertile region, and other areas including hospitality and the tech industry. And then there is this community-led mentorship where successful Sikh business people in the community are encouraged to set up these angel networks as angel investors. And an angel investor is somebody who's been a success in business, who then offers capital, money, finance to these young entrepreneurs to help them build their businesses. So they're being encouraged to promote angel investment into the young entrepreneurs as well. And then, of course, I suppose arguably the more important aspect is the religious autonomy and cultural recognition. So the J&K Minority Commission, this is a big story, actually even today, in the last few days. This is the increased and renewed pressure on the Lieutenant Governor of the region, Manoj Sinha by name, to speed up the establishment of a minority commission. Now, Sikhs believe that this body is essential to protect all their places of worship, their gurdwaras, etc., and ensure a fair representation within government. And then we have this interesting one, which I've sort of called it the Chardi colour versus victimhood narrative. And this is trying to reframe the narrative that is often, even we talk about it as well, that Sikhs being seen as victims. Of course, this goes all the way back to 1947, arguably before, but certainly since partition of 1947, Sikhs have sort of publicly said, look, we are victims of all these great betrayals. We've been victims, particularly pertinent to J&K, of the Chitting Singh Pura massacre in 2000, etc. In other words, we are perpetual victims. But say, no, let's reframe that narrative, because it is a very negative narrative. It's actually very reflective, for example, of the Jewish narrative in Israel. We are permanent victims. No, right. Let's reframe that, and let's just say, let's take a bit more of a positive narrative on this, and let's talk more about Chardi colour. Of course, Chardi colour is this sort of very optimistic sort of feeling of well, I don't need to sort of preach to our audience about Chardi colour, but let's reframe it and say, let's say we are more about this eternal optimism, these high spirits of Chardi colour as a tool to promote modern social development. And then, of course, right. it's actually spreading this renaissance, this movement, saying, look, it's not just specific to where we're talking. It's trying to spread the movement. This sort of, again, it's very similar to Punjab. It's trying to spread. Look, it's not just our small community here in the Punjab or our small community here in J&K. It is all our Sikh communities right across India, particularly. But particularly across the northern states, the sort of the Himalayan foothills, the trans-Himalayan solidarity, as I've called it here. Right. So it's trying to connect J&K Sikhs with bigger Sikh issues that affect Sikh communities right across the whole of India. Now, this month, the J&K Sikh leaders have publicly backed, for example, what are called the Shillong Sikhs. Now, these are Sikhs over in Meghalaya. This, again, just to demonstrate the geographical extent of this movement. Meghalaya sits over in northeastern India, next to Manipur and above Bangladesh, over near Assam. So, again, they're trying to link the issues over in Meghalaya with the same issues, because of course they're exactly the same issues with the Sikhs of J&K. Likewise, the Sikhs of Uttar Pradesh or Himachal Pradesh and all these other states. So again, it's just so united, we form a much more powerful voice, and that's the whole sort of feeling behind that whole sort of unification of the Sikh communities. And then there's also a renewed effort to document the Pahari-speaking Sikh identity. Now, we've not talked about the Pahari-speaking. The Pahari language is actually, it's a collection of local dialects that are particularly spoken in, again, that same region, that sort of northern band of India, the sort of the Himalayan foothills, whether, again, it's Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and J&K, etc. So all these separate sort of languages are sort of bundled up into this envelope called Pahari, and it's trying to to push that the Pahari, if you speak Pahari, it doesn't mean you're not a Kashmiri. It is very much local to Kashmir, and it requires recognition as being an official language within, again, this whole region. So there's. I'll just keep that table up just for a moment. Just sort of summarise sort of the key sort of subjects here. But I want to move back to one of the key elements of this. This, of course, is very relevant to the Sikh community. The language of Punjabi, and again, it's exactly the same arguments that we talked about in Punjab. And indeed, across other regions of India, but particularly Punjab, this is very relevant to the battle for this Punjabi language. Now, there's a lot of context behind this, and again, we touched a lot on this when we talk about the Punjab. But the movement to reinstate Punjabi as this official language in J&K is actually reaching a bit of a head at the moment. It's peaking at the moment. The protests are really taking to the streets across J&K from the Sikh community. And it's being fueled by this sense of linguistic exclusion. And again, when I talk about what's happening in Punjab, it mirrors what's going on there. Because there's been a recent piece of legislation, the Jammu and Kashmir Official Languages Act. And many Sikh leaders have viewed this new act as a deliberate attempt to erase the region's Punjabi heritage. And again, when we talk about mirroring Punjab, it's exactly the same as happening in Punjab. The central government of India are deliberately trying to remove the Punjabi language because they know how important it is to maintaining Sikh cultural heritage. You remove the language, you're removing a key foundational pillar of that culture. Now, the context I talk about this, there are probably, I suppose, 3 or 4 sort of main areas. Institutionally speaking, the Renaissance movement is driven by 3 major grievances that are, say, coming to a bit of a head this month. Institutionally, within the sort of the educational sector, Punjabi, to give you a clue of how significant this is, Punjabi is only offered in 4% of higher secondary schools in J&K. Now, in absolute numbers, there are over 700 secondary schools in J&K. Only 29 offers Punjabi as a language, which in itself, I think, speaks for itself. And even constitutionally, under the 8th schedule in the Indian Constitution, Punjabi is recognised as an official language. Now, it's recognised even as far afield as Canada and North America. Punjabi is recognised as an official language, but it is denied official status in its own historic area of J&K. So again, there's this protest saying we need it formally recognising as an official language within J&K. And finally, of course, there is the religious connection. Now, the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the holy scriptures of Sikhi, is written in the Gurmukhi script. The community views the removal of the language of Punjabi language from schools. It's a direct threat to the religious literacy and future generations of the Sikh community. In other words, if you're removing the Punjabi language, it means those youngsters, as they grow, who don't speak Punjabi, can't even read their own holy scriptures. So again, it's fundamental to the basics of Sikhi and the practice of Sikhi. So there are, as I say, the key demands, and particularly relating to the language. The movement it's actually been spearheaded by 2 main organisations. Just to give you a bit of background to this, there's the All J&K Sikh Coordination Committee, the AJKSCC. I think they need to come up with a new name. It's a bit too difficult to say. And then, of course, the District Gurdwara Parmandat Committee, the DGPC, which is a sister organisation to the SGPC, over obviously down in Punjab. So the DGPC of Jammu and Srinagar. Now, the primary demand is to amend this act, this dreadful act that's been brought in, the J&K Official Languages Act, to, of course, include Punjabi, alongside Kashmiri, Dogri, Hindi, Urdu and English. Secondly, the protesters are demanding that Punjabi be reinstated as a compulsory subject in all government and private schools up to the 10th grade. And finally, there needs to be a bit more of a renewed recruitment, because at the moment, of course, they are short of Punjabi-speaking teachers. So they're demanding an immediate advertisement for more than 500 posts who are capable of speaking the Punjabi language, so that they can then teach it in the schools and higher education. Now, what are they talking about in terms of practical steps for this protest? Well, at the moment, in Jammu, according to a meeting that was held a few days ago, the plan is they are going to form large-scale sit-ins, or dharnas as they're called, and these are scheduled to take place outside the Divisional Commissioner's Office in Jammu. Again, you look at what happened in Chandigarh recently at the Punjab University. Again, it's the same sort of idea in J&K. And sorry, did I say Jammu? Chandigarh. Yeah. Now, the youth wings of the GJPC have also said that they are planning a wheel jam, that is a traffic blockade, in other words, if the administration doesn't provide written assurance by the end of the week. So again, talk about it reaching ahead. In other words, if there is no satisfactory conclusion by the end of this week, there are going to be traffic blockades, or wheel jams as they call them. In Srinagar, there's small-scale symbolic protests are planned outside the press colony, to highlight the fact that Punjabi isn't just a Jammu language, but is spoken by the Sikh minority right across the Kashmir Valley. And a border march, and marches always form a large part of these sorts of things. The border march, and there's discussions of a symbolic march from RS Pura to Jammu that will involve farmers. Yes, again, once again, the farmers take to the streets, and local residents who use primarily Punjabi as their first language. And what's happened recently in terms of recent government engagement? Well, at the end of October, a high-level Sikh delegation, including the president of the SGPC, so it was absolutely the highest levels of the Sikh community, met with the Lieutenant Governor, that's a guy called Manoj Sinha. So whilst the Lieutenant Governor expressed support for cultural preservation, as he called it, there is still no formal legislative amendment that's been tabled yet. And so protesters say, look, we don't want vague assurances. We need something more concrete. We need a formal ordinance or amendment bill. If you don't do that, we will then continue to take to the streets. So there you go, James. As I said at the beginning, it's a forgotten community. We don't really talk about the Sikhs of J&K, but there we are. That is what they're protesting about. And as I say, it's reaching ahead as we speak in J&K. Well done, and full force to the Sikhs of J&K, because of course their issues very much mirror the issues of the Sikhs in Punjab.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've seen this in Punjab and other regions where they are looking to erase certain languages, certain cultures, certain history. And this is just another clear definition of how the BJP and, Modi and other governments are trying to push their narrative and their will on people without any respect, especially after eliminating all the special provisions that J&K was afforded many years ago and now are without. So again, there's a lot there to argue and a lot there to try to fight for. And one of the other things that caught my attention, Angus, is that you were talking about, trying to empower the individuals to create their own destiny when it comes to employment, when it comes to financial stability and future wealth, I guess you could say. Is that so many people are reliant when they look at trying to get a job that actually has a meaningful future and some security to it. They always look to government to hand out those jobs, or to get those government jobs. I shouldn't say hand them out, but to get those government jobs. And that is not sustainable. There is a growing population, but there is not a growing number of positions within government. And a lot of those, as we know, are filled by, use of the caste system and others, and therefore blocking out the Sikhs of J&K and the other minorities out of those opportunities and that type of, solidification of their future. So. Indeed. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And as I say, we do tend to sort of almost neglect the Sikh community in that area. But of course, the Sikh community are spread, even right. Post-partition, the Sikh community are spread right across the whole of that sort of northwestern side of India, but also across the border in Pakistan. And I want to talk about something that's just happened just the other day, or a couple of days ago in Pakistan, is that the president, Asif Ali Zardari, he signed 3 bills on the advice of the Prime Minister, including one for establishing a statutory body to protect and promote the rights of minority communities in the country. Now, this is, again, it's very sort of small news, but ultimately, this, again, has an impact on Sikhs in Pakistan. And of course, Sikhs, again, are a minority in Pakistan, certainly post-partition. But of course, and we do know we've actually got Sikhs in Punjab who do watch the show, and a big shout out to you guys. Thank you for watching. And but this new bill that's just been signed by the president is actually a really powerful, positive step to protect the rights of Sikhs in Pakistan. Of course, it's relevant very much to the Sikh community, because the Sikh Empire did, of course, include a large part of Pakistan. Hence, why so many Sikhs still did remain in Pakistan. So this bill that's just been signed by the president It addresses all sorts of sort of issues, but certainly it gives. It's called the Minorities Rights Bill the National Commission for Minorities Rights Bill 2025 is its formal title, and basically it does many things. But to quickly summarise it, I don't have much time to really get into much detail about it. But what it does do, it gives each minority certain rights and ensures it protects their rights rather than being sort of dominated by the domineering religion of Pakistan, which of course is Islam. And under the new law, the 18-member commission that's being established will also include one reserved seat for a Sikh member, so the Sikhs will get a voice on this commission. And this platform, this sort of commission, it does provide this sort of a formal platform for all sorts of things, including being able, and again it reflects actually ironically issues here in the UK and the Western democracies, is of course the Sikhs in Pakistan are subject to all sorts of hate crimes and targeted violence by the very fact that they are Sikhs. And again, it mirrors what goes on here. And this argument that we need to document and record these sorts of crimes, it's important that these are recognised and formally reported, because without doing that, you can't then do something about it. So this bill does exactly the same as Sikhs, for example, here in the UK, are campaigning for. It recognises the hate crime for what it is. It provides an infrastructure for it to be recorded, and therefore for policies to be put in place to do something about it. And it also includes an educational inclusion aspect to this. So it includes Sikh history and language in provincial curricula. So it advocates, again, relevant to what we've just been talking about in J&K, it is actually setting out an agenda to include Sikh heritage and language in provincial curricula, in other words, in schools, in education. It includes a 5% job quota for minorities in the jobs place. It also it puts in place a bit more infrastructure for financial and legal aid to minority victims of specifically rights abuses, etc. And again, there's a lot about data collection. Again, refer back to what I was saying about collecting data about hate crimes. Now, it's a hugely positive step for Sikhs living in Pakistan. There's been a few criticisms about this, including things like it's a bit of a symbolic commission, as it says an awful lot, but it doesn't actually have really effective powers. For example, it can't initiate investigations on its own. It needs a formal complaint to be made first before it can then move into action. And likewise, anything that it recommends, any sort of recommendations that the commission, this committee of 18 come together and they agree on, they are not legally binding on the government. So again, there's these accusations that it is purely symbolic, etc. So it's not ideal, but what I would say, James, for the Sikhs living in Pakistan, just over the border in Pakistan, it is at least a positive step. It is a step in the right direction. And again, for all the Sikhs who are minorities, whether it's in J&K or whether it's in Pakistan, they are at least now, slowly but surely, getting a little bit more power, a little bit more democratic voice back.
Absolutely. And it's got to start somewhere, and this seems to be a great starting point. In Canada, again, we have various commissions that get set up to deal with the various issues that are of significance to Canadians. And of course, the commission reports don't always have any type of teeth or any obligation on the government to act on it. But they generally do at least take a few of the items at very minimum to at least show some symbol of active participation in the process and make changes. Sometimes, I said, they're very slow or they're very minor changes, but at the same time, it starts somewhere. And I think that's a great opportunity for that launching pad.
Yeah, and it's also, again, very relevant to similar sort of situations in J&K or Punjab, wherever it is that when you start collecting this data, it is actually a very powerful tool to go to the global stage, to the global human rights organisations and say, look, here is the proof that we are a persecuted minority. Here is the proof that we are being targeted specifically for our religion or our heritage, etc. And again, likewise, why it's important in the UK or even North America for similar infrastructures to be put in place so that the data is so powerful. It's boring and dry, but ultimately is a hugely powerful weapon to change policy, to get people, raise awareness, but also to change legislation, to change policy. And of course, when it comes to the whole Khalistan issue, again, how important it will be to support legally with a whole raft of legal evidence supported by data to say this is why we need Khalistan, because we are persecuted, whether it is in J&K or in Punjab or ever, etc. So anyway, right, James, let's move on now to our comment section as time marches on. Again, loads of comments. Thank you to our wonderful loyal audience who've been contributing massively to the comment sections. Gurpreet, again, one of our regulars. Thank you, Gurpreet, for all your efforts on the comments column. Gurpreet says, look, are we going to see any real justice to hold the Indian government to account for what's going on in Canada, amongst other places? Has Canada become a 29th state of India? Well, James, sadly, I think my gut feeling is don't hold your breath on that one.
I think that it's a tough nut to crack because of the fact that there is so much pressure on security and trade initiatives that are being launched that it really puts the human rights and the transnational repression and other things kind of on a side burner. And also, though, I do have some hope to the point that the Canadian DRCMP and CSIS, technically, they are at arm's length of the politicians, but at the same time, if they can put enough pressure in the public eye to put that political pressure back where it belongs, then there might be an opportunity for some change, but I don't think it's going to be lasting. I don't think it's going to be significant, and I think it's going to be more cosmetic than it is going to be practical.
Yeah, and unfortunately, sadly, as we often say, it's dollars versus human rights, and at the moment, dollars always seem to trump human rights in many of these situations. So, Punjab, this is quite a poignant sort of tale of modern day history, this one. Punjab tells us a story of, as he says, a young Sikh boy came in today whilst watching the show. Thank you for watching the show. And this young lad had been initiated into the Khalsa recently. He'd become an Amritdhari Sikh, wore his turban, etc. And he visited the Punjab for a month's holiday and came back within a week. Why? He said as soon as he landed, the discrimination started. He was made to wait for 6 hours at the airport while they stamped his passport, etc. And said he was checked on every checkpoint between Delhi and his village. Every time he went to the nearest town in the family car, he was followed by an unmarked car with police in civilian clothes. He doesn't have anything to do with Khalistan campaigner, etc. In other words, he's just an ordinary Sikh, an Amritdhari Sikh, who's gone back to visit India and he's being targeted simply because he became a Khalsa. And then talks about Rupa Sandhu, one of our critics. He was featured in the last few shows. But yeah, James, I think this is a very sad and disturbing tale of modern India. If you are a Sikh, and again, we get people who comment in our comments say, no, I'm a Sikh in Punjab, I don't have any issues. Well, then why? We have a perfect example here of a Sikh who's visited India wearing his turban as an Amritdhari Sikh. And he's basically been followed by plainclothes policemen. In other words, it's something like the old Eastern Europe of the secret Stasi, the secret police being followed. You know, they're talking about intimidation and harassment by the state. I think it's very concerning, this, James.
Absolutely, and it just shows the level of threat that the India government sees by the Sikhs, by the Khalistan movement, that they are watching. Anybody that's coming into the nation, they are watching with a razor-focused pinpoint of a view because they are concerned. And for the people that are arguing that it's just a fringe movement, why is the India government so concerned?
Yeah,
because of the human rights breaches and because the Khalistan is a real threat to them in terms of the balkanization of India. So
yeah, and I think that is a really important point because you can very easily put a very positive spin on this and say, look, if as James said, India publicly views the Khalistan movement as a fringe movement, well, why on earth are you pouring so many resources, even just in this small case of having an unmarked car with police following an individual who's visited Punjab? Well, you scale that up. That's the scale of fear of the Indian state. That's how it realizes that the Khalistan movement is so powerful and so effective and growing with so much positive momentum that so many people are joining its ranks that they are having to designate so many resources to try and bury it, to try and keep a lid on it. And clearly they're failing. So again, I would take this as a massive compliment to both the Sikh community and the Khalistan movement. This is a huge compliment. And to you, Punjab, yeah, it is outrageous and it's sad. But ultimately, it's just yet more proof that India is terrified because the Khalistan movement is growing so powerfully. So thank you for all that, Punjab. I dipped into our shorts as well, just for your comments. I do like to dip into the shorts every now and again. And we talked about beards in the US military. Again, this topic that just keeps resurfacing and resurfacing. And Mukhtar Singh comes back with an absolutely solid, robust comment, and I couldn't agree with it more. Look, Sikhs fought in 2 world wars. Beards didn't tickle their asses then, so why now? In other words, we managed to have heroic serving soldiers in 2 world wars and all sorts of other conflicts, where you look at those wonderful old regimental photos and battlefield photos of Sikhs in action, and they're wearing their turbans. It wasn't a problem then, so why on earth is it a problem now, James?
Exactly. And I just love the phrasing of that one. It made me laugh. So thanks for the great comment. But yeah, no, and here in Canada, in the US, British history, I mean, yeah, it goes way back. And why it becomes an issue now? Well, because it's about polarizing communities and trying to create divide amongst us. So,
Yeah,
that's my opinion on it.
totally. And again, I just refer back to, was it yesterday's show when I showed that speech from that US Marine who was a Sikh, a retired captain. He said it all for the community, saying, look, I am perfectly capable of doing my job. You want to motivate me to serve my country, then don't force me to choose between my faith or my country, because that is the wrong approach to this. You can do both. And Surjit Keller basically makes this point. Losing your identity, to the fact that you have to choose what is right, is quite a big deal. It is. And again, the thumbnail actually basically had that phrase, James. Is it faith or country, or is it faith and country? Ultimately, of course, you can serve both your faith and your country, and it is better for your country to allow that individual to serve both, James.
Absolutely. And it shouldn't even be a question, Angus, especially in this day and age.
And reverting back to what we've actually just been talking about, Dot says, why Canada and UK are signing trade deals with India? It's baffling. No, it's not. I'm afraid it's not baffling. And this is why we just laugh cynically, because it's all about dollars. Clearly, our ruling elites, whether it's Mark Carney, and by this read the Globalists, whether it's Mark Carney or Keir Starmer, they care more about trade deals and money than they do about human rights. It's sad that we seem to brush human rights under the carpet when it comes down to trade deals, James.
Absolutely. And then, of course, it's no secret that Canada and the US are in a trade war right now as well. And to look to other international markets, well, India is an easy target when you take a look at the ability of sales there and their desperation to move past the human rights issues and the transnational repression issues by saying, come on, we'll give you a good trade deal. It's like, buying a car with bald tires, but hey, we got you a great stereo.
Yeah, and Melinda Chandy sees it for what it is. Governments have their own agendas. And I wouldn't even say it's governments, it's probably those behind the governments who clearly have their own agenda. And again, I often refer conspiratorially to the globalists, the World Economic Forum, etc. They've got their own agenda. And unfortunately, human rights and the rest of us never seem to feature in those discussions. Bobby Singh, actually really following up on a comment that Bobby made, I think it was in yesterday's show, about how do we break up India? Let's break up India financially. Well, as you said, Modi is stupid to go with Russia. Russia is going to bankrupt India. That will lead to the breakup of India. Yeah, well, of course, India has this hugely historic relationship with Russia, with Moscow. We do know the Gandhi dynasty and Indira Gandhi, for example, had deep links with the KGB and with Moscow. So ultimately, strategically, to align yourself with Russia, is that potentially going to bankrupt India? Well, we do know that India is essentially bankrolling Moscow at the moment by buying its oil illegally, or certainly against global sanctions. Now, is Russia going to go bankrupt? I don't know. Russia is a very, very robust nation. I put that as an understatement. Is Russia going to bankrupt India? I don't know. But ultimately, something is going to, as I keep referring to this catalytic event, something is going to break up India. We don't know what it is. Almost by definition, these catalytic events are unpredictable, unforeseeable, but they suddenly come along. And before you suddenly realise it, these big events happen. So, James, yeah, it could be financial. It could be like, for example, we talked about Punjab University, the protest there. It's going to take something, but something will trigger that domino effect of the breakup of India.
And one thing I think that we also have to look at too is that how many nations would have a dog in the fight, so to speak, when it comes to ensuring that India isn't forced into a bankruptcy by Russia and to keep some type of foundation there, whether that's China, whether that's the US, whether it's Canada, whether it's Europe. There is too much international interest, I think, for India to go bankrupt on that scale. So.
Indeed, and I've just zoomed in there because I
Yeah.
like my ranty face there. I was obviously clearly that thumbnail. Whoever chose the thumbnail has got me in mid rant. You know, you do know I do love a good rant once I get going, which is
Oh,
why
come on. You never rant, Angus.
which is often why we run out of time. I'm looking at the clock, thinking, "Oh no, don't get me ranting now, otherwise we're gonna run out of time again." So, anyway, the final set kicks off with SSI Singh. Thank you, SSI Singh. Good to see you both. Well, awesome program. News all can catch up with. Well, again, we couldn't do the show without you guys. So again, turning it back on you guys. It's great to see you virtually speaking. Great to see our audience. Thank you for your continued loyalty. Much appreciated. And Hardal Singh follows up again, one of our regulars. Thanks, James and Angus. A nice show. And Mr. 403 says, two good people. I don't know if we're good or bad, but we do our best, James, don't we?
Well, and I'm assuming they're from Calgary because 403 would be an area code in Calgary, Canada, I do believe. So
good
possibly.
We do know we have a big audience in Canada, so welcome to you guys. And Avatar Dylan, nice one, Angus and James. Brilliant journalism once again. I don't know if it's brilliant, but we try our best. Hope you and your families have a wonderful Christmas. Keep up the good work. Amazing. Thanks. Well, again, I'm going to turn this back on our audience, James, and we have to wish our audience a happy Christmas. Of course, most of our audience are in the Sikh community, but ultimately we do know for a fact that many Sikhs do celebrate Christmas, particularly with their children. It is a wonderful time of celebration. The children, of course, is a wonderful time, particularly for children. And and before we sort of wrap up with the final comments, James, I am just going to take this opportunity to say that we are actually off for Christmas next week. There will be one or two shorts coming out just to keep the channel going. But ultimately, we will be back on, I think it's Tuesday the 30th, I think. So it's a week on Tuesday. We'll be back with normal perspectives returning to roll us into the new year. But again, it's a huge thank you to our audience on behalf of James and myself for a wonderful 2025. Thank you for all your support. We do wish you, of course, a very happy Christmas, do we not, James?
Absolutely. And on that note, Angus, of course, we would love to hear how you are celebrating Christmas. And, by all means, feel free to send us little video clip links or photos as well of how you are spending the holidays. We would love to share those with our audience or just for our eyes for our reading as well. So feel free to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Send us a photo to message@satlugetv.com of your Christmas celebration. We'll be delighted if you're happy to share those things on the show. But unfortunately, we must wrap things up with the final sign-off from Just Sing and Suftu Muffins, again, one of our regulars. Thank you, Suftu Muffins, for your constant comments on the columns that say Khalistan Zindabad. And of course, after 2025, yes, we roll into 2026 very shortly. And no doubt we will see in the foreseeable the establishment of Khalistan. We know it's around the corner. But as we say, James, a big, huge Khalistan Zindabad to the world.
Absolutely. It is great. It's been a great year. We look forward to the last couple of shows of the year. And we wish everybody a very safe season because we want to see you back in January as well when we start to go live.
Indeed, we do. And we'll wrap things up there for another day and indeed another week and indeed almost another year. I think we've got 2 more shows before the actual end of the year. But anyway, but thanks so much for all of you. Thanks for watching. Do keep your comments coming in. Do let us know your thoughts. Do let us know your Christmas thoughts as well, etc. And do let us know, as always, anything that you think we should be talking about or any news that we might have missed. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
We wish you all a happy Christmas. You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.